Hello, this is the training on 2016 accommodations for state assessments. Thank you for taking the time to learn about accommodations. It's important to be informed so that as an educator, you can make the best decisions for your students. As always, this training does not take the place of reading the associated documents on TEA's website and also posted in this e-course. You don't need to have all of the information on accommodations memorized. Just know where to access the documents to reference before making decisions for students. This is the accommodation triangle for 2016. There are no changes to the triangle from the previous year, 2015. The Texas Education Agency's Accommodation Resources webpage has comprehensive information about accommodations for students with disabilities taking state assessments. You can click a link to access the webpage in this e-course. How do we determine if a student with a disability is allowed to have an accommodation for a state assessment? Well, there are three types of students who should be considered. The first would be a special education student who meets established criteria for certain accommodations. The second is a student receiving 504 services and meets established criteria for certain accommodations. And lastly would be a student who has a disabling condition who does not receive special education nor 504 but meets established eligibility criteria for certain accommodations. There are certain committees who are authorized to make testing accommodations decisions for students, including ARD committees, 504 committees, and other committees such as RTI. You should review a document titled Critical Information about Accommodations for Students with Disabilities. This document is located in this e-course and is also accessible from TEA's accommodation webpage. This document contains general information about testing accommodations as well as how to plan for testing accommodations. Not all accommodations used during instruction are allowed for state assessment. Some accommodations used for instruction would invalidate the content being assessed or compromise the security and integrity of the state assessment. When determining eligibility for testing accommodations, one of the caveats is that the accommodation must be routinely and effectively used. What does this mean? It means that it should be routinely used during instruction and testing so that the student is comfortable using it on the day of the assessment. We should also have evidence that the accommodation is effective. Prior to making a decision regarding the eligibility of a testing accommodation, the committee should know if the accommodation is being routinely used and if it is effective. The accommodation triangle is broken into two types of accommodations, Type 1 and Type 2. For both types, the accommodations are approved by the appropriate committee on campus. For Type 2 accommodations, these must also be approved by TEA through an accommodation request form. Only the campus testing coordinator is authorized to submit the accommodation request form to TEA. The campus testing coordinator and a member from the committee who made the decision to use a Type 2 accommodation must collaborate to complete all required documentation on the form before it is submitted to TEA. TEA wants very specific information before a request will be considered. Each accommodation on the triangle has a corresponding document which includes a description of the accommodation, the assessments the accommodation may be used on by eligible students, student eligibility criteria, who can make the accommodation decisions for students, where to document these decisions, and what to record on the answer documents, specific examples and types of the accommodation that may be used on the state assessment. Pay careful attention to this list because sometimes it is exhaustive. Special instructions and considerations about the accommodation. Educators must be aware of this information when making decisions about using accommodations and when administering assessments with accommodations. There were very minor changes to TEA's accommodations for 2016. There were no policy changes, only clarifications. TEA did add Algebra 2 and English 3 on some of the accommodations. However, Humble ISD will not be participating in these optional assessments. Listed here are the Type 1 accommodations. The accommodations in red are the only accommodations that had changes for 2016. The next couple of slides will review those changes on all 3 of the updated accommodations. The major change for oral and signed administration is that all mention of Star A was removed except for a note explaining that an oral administration was not applicable to Star A. Oral administration eligibility for Star A should not be determined nor documented. Students taking Star A receive all of the benefits of an oral administration automatically because of the functionality built in the test. In addition, test administrators can also read aloud required reference material such as a dictionary and allowable accommodations such as supplemental aids for the Star A assessment. On the mathematics manipulatives, new for this year is that the clock should not have gears, meaning that the clock should have independently moving hour and minute hands. No other changes were made to this accommodation. There were 2 noteworthy changes made to the supplemental aids policy. The first is that multiplication charts that are grade appropriate may be used. Previously, the multiplication chart could only be 0 through 12. Now, they just need to be grade appropriate. The second change regarding supplemental aids was made to the number chart. Previously, only a number chart to 100 was allowed. This limitation has now been removed. All supplemental aids must be approved for use at the district level. We have already approved many supplemental aids, which you can use now. These are accessible on the District Common in the Teacher Resources folder. Simply click on the District Common, Teacher Resources, then Assessment, and then Star Supplemental Aids. There are many that are already posted. If you do want to use a supplemental aid that is not already posted on the District Common, please follow these steps. First, review TEA's document titled Supplemental Aids for Star Spanish, Star L, Star A, What's Allowed and What's Not. After reading this document, the classroom teacher will develop the supplemental aid. Once the classroom teacher has developed it, she will give it to the ALT for review. The ALT will make sure it is content appropriate and meets TEA's guidelines. If the ALT approves, the ALT will send it to Betsy Ulrich for approval at the district level. Once approved by Betsy, it will be sent to Christina Trotter for posting on the District Common. Christina will also notify the teacher that it has been approved for use. Please note, the teacher is responsible for giving the approved supplemental aid to the campus testing coordinator just prior to the administration of the state assessment so that the student has it on testing day. These are the Type 2 accommodations. Again, all of these require additional approval by TEA. There have not been any changes to these policies for 2016. The next couple of slides will cover the most frequently asked questions in Humble ISD regarding accommodations. Jamie is a 4th grade student receiving special education services for disabilities in reading and math. He struggles in all areas of math, from recalling basic facts to remembering how to regroup. He has been using a calculator in classroom instruction and testing all year and has improved his ability to arrive at the right answer more often. Can Jamie be provided a calculator on the STAR accommodated Grade 4 mathematics assessment? The answer is no. Jamie does not meet the eligibility criteria for students in grades 3 and 4 because he has no difficulty writing numbers and has normal vision. It is the expectation that students in grades 3 and 4 be given the opportunity to learn and practice the skills in the TEKS related to addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division without the use of technology. Jesse is a 7th grade student receiving special education services for a disability not related to math calculation. His problem-solving and reasoning skills are strong. However, due to short-term memory deficits, he is unable to remember the steps needed to solve complex mathematics problems with algorithms and often loses his place in the calculation process. Jesse has attended after-school tutoring all year, but scores on classroom assignments and tests indicate that his performance has not improved. A calculator has been added to his IAP, and he now uses it routinely during classroom instruction and testing. This accommodation has allowed Jesse to more appropriately demonstrate his problem-solving skills. Can Jesse be provided a calculator on the STAR Grade 7th Mathematics Assessment? The answer is yes. Jesse does meet the eligibility criteria for students in grades 5 through 8, because although he has received intensive instruction and remediation, he is still unable to correctly perform the steps in an algorithm to complete more complex mathematics problems. Gabby is a 6th grade student receiving special education services under Other Health Impairment to address her needs related to a chronic medical condition. Medication for Gabby's heart condition affects her stamina and alertness, making it difficult for her to carry out multi-steps problem correctly. The ARD Committee recently added a calculator as an accommodation for classroom use, which has allowed Gabby to continue to progress in mathematics instruction. Can Gabby be provided a calculator on the STAR Grade 6 Mathematics Assessment? Yes, Gabby does meet the eligibility criteria for students in grades 5 through 8. Because she's in special education, she routinely uses a calculator in classroom and has positive results, and her disability affects her ability to complete mathematics calculations correctly. And although intensive instruction or remediation are ongoing, success is limited. Tanisha is an 8th grade student who is eligible for special education services as speech impaired. She has difficulty comprehending what she reads independently. However, orally presenting written material to her is effective. Tanisha's scores on reading comprehension assignments are dramatically higher when questions and answers are presented orally versus read independently. Teacher observations also indicate that she answers comprehension questions more accurately during classroom discussions of grade level text. Can Tanisha have an oral administration on the STAR Grade 8 assessments? Yes, because she routinely and effectively uses this accommodation in the classroom, receives special education services, and has evidence of reading difficulties. However, only the test questions and answer choices from each assessment may be read aloud. The reading selections from the reading assessment may not be read aloud to students. Chad is a 5th grade student who is eligible for special education services as learning disabled in reading and math. He has difficulty comprehending what he reads independently and receives many classroom accommodations. Chad's scores are dramatically higher when questions and answers are read orally versus what is read independently. The ARD Committee determined he is eligible for STAR A based on the use of classroom accommodations. Can Chad have oral administration on the STAR A Grade 5 assessments? The answer is no, because oral administration is not applicable to STAR A and should not be determined or documented by the ARD Committee. Remember, oral administration is a built-in functionality of the STAR A assessments. Marcelle is a 7th grade student who is served under 504 because of dyslexia. She has difficulty with spelling. Sometimes her spelling is so poor that she is unable to even find the word in the dictionary. In class, her writing samples are greatly improved when she is able to use Co-Writer, which is word prediction software. Can Marcelle use Co-Writer for the STAR Grade 7 writing assessment? Yes. Marcelle meets the eligibility criteria for spelling assistance. Word prediction software is included as an example of a type of spelling assistance. That software that we use in Humble ISD, or one of the types, is Co-Writer. McKenna has deficits in written expression and needs complex transcribing to be successful on STAR. She gets very agitated and shuts down if she's required to write lengthy assignments. Her hands shake, which impacts her ability to write correctly on a line or in space. McKenna has spatial and visual deficits in her writing, which causes letters and words to be crowded up in space. She has a hard time writing complete thoughts, but can verbalize them without a problem. McKenna has a problem with sentence structure and writing incomplete sentences due to becoming agitated when trying to express herself through writing. Based on this rationale, and the writing sample to the right is the accommodation request form for complex transcribing are approved or denied by TEA. The answer is that the request is denied. McKenna is capable of producing a written response. Words and individual letters in the writing sample are recognizable for the most part. The student must respond in writing, for example, either handwritten or typed, if physically able to do so. Alejandro is in 9th grade and has spinal muscular atrophy. Due to the degenerative progression of symptoms, he has severe spinal and bone deformities and limited use of all body muscles. These disabling conditions prevent him from writing on his own or operating technology. Alejandro dictates all math and science computations to the teacher, who then writes on a whiteboard or operates the calculator. Based on this rationale is the accommodation request form for Math Scribe approved or denied by TEA. The answer is that the request is approved. There is evidence that Alejandro meets each of the required eligibility criteria for Mathematics Scribe. The test administrator may record scratch work as well as press the buttons on the calculation device based on Alejandro's directions. And this is the last one that I'm going to go through for today. This request is for a Type 2 extra day. AJ is identified with an autism spectrum disorder. She often experiences emotional outbursts such as yelling, throwing objects, and crying. When presented with a lengthy assignment, AJ shuts down, refuses to work, and may try to tear the pages. Due to the severity of her coping skills in a general education classroom setting, AJ is assigned a one-on-one assistant. When an outburst occurs, the assistant takes AJ out of the classroom. A break of up to 15 minutes may be needed before AJ will resume work. Because breaks are required, AJ may need an additional day for testing. Last year, when restricted to 4 hours of testing, AJ ran out of time and did not finish any of the 8th grade STAR test. Based on this rationale is the accommodation request form for an extra day approved or denied through TEA. The answer is that the request is denied. Though AJ exhibits severe reactions, there is not a clear connection to time as the factor responsible for her behavioral issues. There is no evidence that an attempt to address her needs with other accommodations, such as an individual administration, chunking of work into smaller sections, and extra time within the same day, has been made, nor was there evidence given which showed that providing an extra day would meet AJ's needs. I hope that you found this training helpful and informative today. Again, you don't need to memorize all of these policies and procedures. Just know where the associated documents are so that you can reference them prior to making accommodations decision for students. Thanks. If you have any questions, please contact your campus testing coordinator.